A very good morning to all my students. Welcome to English 2 class. We have already learned the poem The Cold Within, and the question answers are already given to you. Hopefully you have read all, and since I haven't found any sort of query on your part, hope everything was all right. So, even if you have any, just feel free to ask. Today we will study another prose named Hearts and Hands by O. Henry. In class 8, you have read one prose of O. Henry. The name of the prose was After 20 Years. That was a tremendous prose, and all of you liked that very much, I remembered. And Hearts and Hands is another masterpiece. We know this O. Henry is actually the name of an American writer, that is William Sidney Porter. We have seen ready wit, gentle humor and surprise endings are very common in all his prose, and this prose won't be an exception. You will find two main themes here in this prose. One is compassion and another is appearances versus reality, because what is seen, it is not every time that is true. Okay, so we will see the whole action of the story took place in a coach of a train, and it actually follows the chronological sequence, follows one event after another, and it seems that O. Henry has maintained the order of time, place and action. The story is narrated in the third person narrative. The author is subjective and does not interfere in the story, does not participate in the plot anytime. So I won't reveal the climax. Let us read the story. This is quite easy to understand. I won't reveal the climax. This is quite and easy to understand. So let us begin with the story. Hopefully the book is kept opened in front of you. That's page number 69. At Denver, there was an influx of passengers into the coaches on the eastbound B&M Express. At Denver, the place was Denver. An influx of passenger means arrival of a large number of people at the same time into the coaches on eastbound B&M Express. In one coach, there sat one pretty young woman dressed in elegant taste and surrounded by all the luxurious comforts of an experienced traveler. So there was a lady who was elegantly dressed, and it seems that she is a frequent traveler, as the things she was surrounded with present that scenario. Among the newcomers were two young men. So there were two newcomers. They were two young men. One of handsome presence with a bold, frank countenance. One was very handsome and very frank countenance. Countenance means face and manner. And the other, a ruffled, glum-faced person, heavily built and roughly dressed. Another, his companion was, he was, ruffled means quite upset. Glum-faced means gloomy-faced. And heavily built, his physique was heavily built and strongly built, and roughly dressed. He was not dressed in proper manner or in a particular order. The two were handcuffed together. Okay, so these two companions were handcuffed together. This is quite interesting. As they passed down the aisle of the coach, the only vacant seat offered was a reserved one facing the attractive young woman. When they passed the aisle of the coach, we have seen, if we all travel by train, we have seen there are three seats. The corner one is window, the middle one is middle, that is written WM, and aisle for the last one, which follows the corridor. So while they just cross aside the aisle of the coach, the only vacant seat offered was a reserved one facing the attractive young woman. Only one reserved seat was present there, and that was facing the beautiful and elegant and attractive woman. Here the linked couple seated themselves. Since they were linked together, so here it is told the linked couple sit there themselves. The young woman's glance filled them with a distant, swift disinterest. So the glance of the woman that actually fell on them from a distant place and with lot of disinterest. Then with a lovely smile brightening her countenance and a tender pink tinging her rounded cheeks. Then what was the change in the appearance of the lady? The smile brightening her countenance. There was seen lovely smile on her countenance, and that seems to brighten her face. Tender pink tinging her rounded cheeks. It seems that her rounded cheeks actually develop a pink color. It seems like the girl is blushing or glowing. She held out a little grey gloved hand. She just held out a little grey gloved hand, as she was wearing grey colored gloves. So she just held out grey gloved hand. When she spoke, her voice full, sweet and deliberate. When she spoke, how was her voice? Sweet, deliberate and full. Proclaimed that its owner was accustomed to speak and be heard. So the tone of the voice, the owner of such tone means the lady was accustomed to to speak and to hear. Means the character who was sitting in front of the lady, the character is well known to the lady because the tone of the voice is accustomed to speak and to be heard. Well, Mr. Easton, if you will make me speak first, I suppose I must. Well, is it Mr. Easton? If you ask me to speak first, I think I must speak. Don't you ever recognize old friends when you meet them in the West? So, do you have any type of practice of forgetting friends when you meet them in the West? Means by this we can understand the woman is hinting here that Mr. Easton was a known character to the lady. The younger man roused himself sharply at the sound of her voice. So he got roused with the tone of the voice. Seemed to struggle with a slight embarrassment which he threw off instantly. So it shows that the character is not very easy to respond to the girl's question. Rather, he felt quite embarrassment. And he threw off himself instantly and then clasped her fingers with his left hand. Then hold or closed her fingers. As we have seen, the girl already held out her hand. So the man also just held his hand and closed the girl's hand. Means just it was a type of handshake sort of gesture. "It's Miss Fairchild," he said with a smile. "Okay, you're Miss Fairchild," he said with a smile. "I'll ask you to excuse the other hand. It's otherwise engaged just at present." So the girl asked, "I'll ask you to excuse the other hand." Why? Because the man held out his left hand, not the right. "It's otherwise engaged at present." He said this hand is just engaged for that time being. He slightly raised his right hand, bound at the wrist by the shining bracelet to the left one of his companion. So he shows that his right hand is bound with a shining bracelet and to his companion. The glad look in the girl's eyes slowly changed to a bewildered horror. Since the girl was very happy and she was blushing in meeting that man, Suddenly the charm started, lowering down. That face becomes changed, and it shows that she has developed a bewildered horror. Bewildered means a confusing horror. I mean, he has seen his known friend is handcuffed to other one. The glow faded from her cheeks. Her lips parted in a vague, relaxing distress. Okay, her lips parted. Okay, lips seems to be parted. Okay, in a vague and relaxing distress. Easton, with a little laugh, as if amused, was about to speak again when the other forestalled him. So, Easton was about to speak something when the other forestalled him. Forestalled him means he acted before in order to prevent something. Means the companion of Mr. Easton, he just intervened the situation as he wanted something to be prevented. What is that? The glum-faced man had been watching the girl's countenance with veiled glances. So the glum-faced man means the other man who was with Mr. Easton. So he was observing the girl with veiled glances, means with indirect glances or indirect looks from his keen and shrewd eyes, from his sharp and pointed eyes. "You will excuse me for speaking, miss?" he asked. "Would you excuse me for speaking, miss? But I see you're acquainted with the marshal here." I can understand you are well acquainted with the man who is a marshal here. Okay. "If you will ask him to speak a word for me when we get to the pen, he will do it, and it will make things easier for me there. He is taking me to Leavenworth prison. It's 7 years for counterfeiting." Okay. So, if you will ask him to speak a word for me, then he will definitely say. But let me say, actually he is taking me to Leavenworth. Okay. To the Leavenworth prison. It's 7 years for counterfeiting. Counterfeiting means forgery. Deceiving someone. So what is my offense? As I counterfeited, so I was taken to the Leavenworth prison by this marshal. Here we can see this is verbal irony. Verbal irony is what? What is said, completely different thing is meant. So just understand, just point out this very minute things of the poem, of this prose. He said, "I am taken to Leavenworth prison," and he is the marshal. Okay. "Oh," said the girl with a deep breath and returning color. Oh, and the color seems to have returned to his face, restored her face. "So that is what you are doing out here, a marshal. Okay, now I understand what are you doing here. You are a marshal, right?" "My dear Miss Fairchild," said Easton calmly, "I had to do something. Underline, this is another verbal irony. What is this something is not at all clear to us, not clear to Miss Fairchild as well. Money has a way of taking wings unto itself, and it takes money to keep step with a crowd in Washington. Now you just listen to every words of his very carefully. He said money has wings and it can travel, and it's very hard to be there in the crowd without money in Washington. So we can understand previously he lived in Washington, right? So he said money is something that does not remain with one person all the time. It has a habit of changing its place, and money is required to be an inhabitant of Washington. I saw this opening in the West, and a marshalship isn't quite as high a position as that of an ambassador, but So yes, I think I managed some money, but I think marshalship is not that of an honorable job as an ambassador. Okay. The ambassador, said the girl warmly, doesn't call anymore. Okay. He need not ever have done so. You ought to know that. And so now you are one of these dashing Western heroes. Ambassador, you that doesn't call anymore. Ambassador is what? No, you just no need to be disturbed about that. And you are one of the Washington heroes right now. Means since you are a marshal, you have a stout body, and you are prone to expose yourself to the terrible and dangerous action. So you are no less than a Washington hero, and you ride and shoot and go into all kinds of dangers. So I know that you exposed yourself to every kinds of dangers. That's different from the Washington life. It's quite different from the Washington life. You have been missed from the old crowd. Now the woman is saying you are missed from the old crowd. Means he is badly missed from the crowd the woman was acquainted with. The girl's eyes, fascinated, went back, widening a little to rest upon the glittering handcuffs. Again the girl's eyes become very small and little, and it seems that she is looking at the striking and glittering handcuffs again. Don't you worry about them, miss. You don't have to worry about them, miss, said the other man. The other man said, all marshals handcuff themselves to their prisoners to keep them from getting away. So the other man, not Easton, the other man said, ma'am, you do not need to be worried. All the marshals, they just handcuff themselves with the companion of, not the companion, with the convicts, so that they couldn't go away. Mr. Easton knows his business. This is another verbal irony. Knows his business is what? Here the girl is thinking that Mr. Easton knows his business of a marshal. But actually the scene was something different. You will come to know towards the end of the prose. That is a surprise for all of you. Just do listen to the story. Will we see you again soon in Washington? Asked the girl. Would I be able to see you again very soon in Washington? He is asking to whom? Easton. So Easton said, what Easton replied? Not soon, I think, said Easton. My butterfly days are over, I feel. My butterfly days are over, I feel. Here it is another verbal irony. Butterfly days are over means his days of freedom is over. So days of freedom is over can be one, and the other thing, since he is going to Leavenworth, maybe his days to socialize with others, that is a life to be led by him in Washington, that is over. I love the West, said the girl irrelevantly. The girl said, I love the West. See, you can see there is a hint. As Mr. Easton is going to West, the girl says here, hinting at something, that I love the West, said the girl irrelevantly. Her eyes were shining softly. She looked out the car window. She began to speak truly simply, without the gloss of style and manner. Generally she was maintaining a style, a manner, okay, from the very beginning. But when this time she just looks outside the window and starts speaking without any type of gloss or any type of synthetic manner. Mama and I spent the summer in Denver. So her mother and she just spent their summer in Denver. She went home a week ago. Now she went back home a week ago. as father was slightly ill. I could live and be happy in the West. Now see, the girl is hinting that she wants to get settled with Mr. Easton here. That is why she is saying, my mother and I came here during summer, that is in Denver, and she just went back home as my father was ill, and now I would love to be settled there in West because she has heard that Mr. Easton is going to West. I think the air here agrees with me. See, it is definitely here that I think the air here agrees with me. This is personification. How can the air agree with her? But to show how much bold she is and how much intensity she is having in her speech, she just used this phrase that air here agrees with me. Money isn't everything, but people always misunderstand things and remain stupid. Money isn't everything, and people always misunderstand and things and remain stupid. This is again verbal irony. Money isn't everything. Okay, and people, see here something. What is dramatic irony? Here it is dramatic irony. But people always misunderstand things and remain stupid. This is dramatic irony. Dramatic irony actually present there in the scene because here something the readers can understand but not the character present in the prose, that is Fairchild. She does not understand, but the readers understand. There is some twist, and I think you have already guessed. Then also just wait for the climax. This is not everything what is said and that is meant. Something else is meant rather. Say, Mr. Marshall, growled the glum-faced man. This isn't quite fair. I am needing a drink. Now see, another man, the glum-faced one, when they two were discussing about their future and when he just understood that the girl is expressing her thoughts to get settled with Mr. Easton afterwards, he just interfered. He said, this isn't quite fair. I am needing a drink. I need a drink. And I haven't had a smoke all day. I haven't had a smoke all day. This all day went and I have not a smoke. Haven't you talked long enough? Don't you think that you are talking too much? Take me in the smoker now, won't you? Smoker is a zone in the compartment. Take me there. I need to have a smoke. Won't you? Won't you take me there? I am half dead for a pipe. See, this is hyperbolic statement. I am half dead for a life. See, here this exaggeration is deliberately expressed in order to show the intensity of the in order to show the emphasis of the phrase that I am going to be dead out of smoke. You just take me there so that I can have a smoke. The bound travelers rose to their feet. So the bound travelers, as they were bound to each other, they rose to their feet. They stood up, Easton with the same slow smile on his face. I can't deny a petition for tobacco. See, I can't deny the petition for tobacco. Here it seems that it is told on the part of the other man that he is a marshal. So he said here, I can't deny petition for tobacco. I cannot deny your request for tobacco. He said lightly, it's the one friend of unfortunate. Goodbye, Miss Fairchild. Duty calls, you know. So he said, since I am a marshal and I can't deny your petition, so I'll be taking there. So goodbye, Fairchild. Duty calls, you know. So there's a duty. He held out his hand for a farewell. So he just held out his hand and went for a farewell. It's too bad you are not going east, she said, reclothing herself with manner and style. Now she said, this is too bad, you are not going to East. And she just recollected all her manner and gloss once again. But you must go on to Leavenworth, I suppose. But I thought you should have gone to Leavenworth. Yes, said Easton, I must go on to Leavenworth. I have to go to Leavenworth. The two men slided down an aisle into the smoker. They just went aside the smoker. The two passengers in a seat nearby had heard most of the conversation. Now the climax comes. The two passengers, they actually listened the whole conversation. Said one of them, that Marshall's a good sort of chap. The Marshall is a good one. Some of these Western fellows are all right. Some of the inhabitants of Western cities are good. Pretty young to hold an office like that, isn't he? He is asking to the another passenger, don't you think that he is quite young to hold a position of a marshal? Young, exclaimed the first speaker. Young, he exclaimed. Why? Oh, didn't you catch on? Oh, you did not understand the whole thing. Did you ever know an officer to handcuff a prisoner to his right hand? Have you ever heard the officer is handcuffed with his right hand to the convict? No. Actually, here reveals the ultimate truth. Actually, Mr. Easton was the convict, not the marshal. And the companion sitting beside him with whom he was linked with the handcuff was the marshal. But since he noticed the girl, Miss Fairchild, shows a sort of acquaintance to the man, and she was, her face brightens and started blushing when she meets Mr. Easton. He just does not want to break her dream. That is why he just tells the false. And everyone in the reader, in the audience understands this fact. But not the girl, Miss Fairchild. She does not understand. Okay. And now you will just quickly try to relate. You can understand. See, he is taking me to Leavenworth prison. It's 7 years for counterfeiting. What these lines are said by whom? These lines are said by the actual marshal, but he represented Mr. Easton as a marshal there, and he says he is taking me there to Leavenworth. Here I have said this is verbal irony. He wants to say that he is being taken to Leavenworth, but the purpose is different. Who actually he was going there, but not as a convict, as a marshal. But he does not want this to be understood by Fairchild. Okay. Another is I had to do something. That something is the job of Mr. Easton. What is something? Easton means that the job of a convict, not a marshal. My butterfly days are over. My butterfly days are over. The days of freedom, that is over. But actually what he meant that his days to socialize with other as he used to do while he was an inhabitant of Washington, that days are over, as he is going to Leavenworth for counterfeiting, and he was given an order for 7 years of imprisonment there. Okay. Money isn't everything. People always misunderstand things and remain stupid. See, these lines are uttered by Miss Fairchild, but who is stupid? Miss Fairchild. She does not understand. The audience can understand, the readers can understand that yes, what is the reality and what is the appearance, but she cannot understand. She was just buoyed away with the appearances, the falsehood, and she cannot fetch the real truth. I can deny a petition for tobacco. Another line. Here I can't deny, because here Mr. Easton meant that since he is a convict, he cannot deny the order of his marshal. Since he was ordering to take him to the smoker zone to have a smoke, being his convict, he cannot deny. But what Miss Fairchild understands? She understands that being a marshal, he is taking care of his convict, but the situation was completely opposite. So this Henry's prose are very much very much famous for this surprise endings, and here also the story ends in a surprising note, and the ultimate truth is revealed towards the end through the conversation of two passengers. So this is quite an interesting one. You will find much interest in reading this prose. Do read the prose, and in the next class we'll be discussing the theme and the title of the prose and some detailing. Till then, you just read the prose with the explanation that you will get in the study material section. Hopefully you have no difficulty, and if you have, just feel free to mention. So till then, do study well. Have a great day ahead. Thank you.